Okay.
So you should be good to go. I'm gonna. Hey, David.
All right, how are you?
Well, how are you? That was a disconcerting look. I got it.
Don't mean to be disconcerted.
I'm gonna start my coffee real quick. Anybody else want coffee? Okay, yeah, I'm taking about 1 minute to brew a pot. Give me just a second.
Great. Okay. All right. What are we doing?
So are we ready? Is it time?
Are you ready? Are you ready? Yeah, it could be time.
Okay, well, good morning.
Well, let me introduce you, if you don't mind. I mean, most everybody knows you, but this is Jeff Wardeska is our speaker this morning. Jeff was the chair of the Department of Chemistry he was chair when I came to East Tennessee, and then persisted as chair for some years after that. I don't know how long you were in that position, but he's been a chemistry professor for most of his adult life, and trained at Ohio State University.
Ohio University.
Ohio. Okay, great. All right. So he's going to give us a talk on there is an entire field of evolutionary chemistry, and I think that's sort of where we're going today. Is that not correct? Yeah. All right.
Thank you.
Jeff, take it away.
Good morning, everyone. So this is the third. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
So I'm here. But yeah, this is the third. I guess the third in this series of starting with Evolution Sunday. So Evolution Sunday series, I guess. Before the first two, Brian has done a great job of describing the evolution of the universe. And he's brought us to a point where we have a sort of an uninhabited, a barren universe. And the question that chemists are interested in is, if you think about what today, essentially most of our materials that we need, the molecules that we need for body, we get by ingestion. We eat things from things that were previously alive. We get things from, the steak that you ate last week. Our body broke down the protein into individual amino acids and then remade the amino acids into the proteins that we need. And we get essentially all our nutrients and stuff from previously other living things. But chemists are interested in the universe that Brian gave us. Where did the first cells that emerged from the primordial mud, where did they get the molecules that necessary for life? Since there were no living organisms around to make that. And so that's the question I'd like to address today. We don't have all of the answers, but we have to make an intriguing story, I think. So, Brian left us with this roughly 100 elements that make up our world today. They came, if you think about it, that's kind of amazing thing. We're the repurposed atoms from previous stars, okay? We're really literally the stuff of the universe of the stars. We don't need all those elements to explain life. Forget the title of the screen, but the elements in blue are the elements that we need for life. This may not work. Okay, so here, the blue elements. So where's my cursor? So here's carbon is element number 6. We're a carbon-based life form, and so all of the molecules we need make us up are carbon-based. Carbon-based with nitrogen, reacts with nitrogen, it reacts with oxygen, it reacts with hydrogen. We need the metals, the iron, the manganese, copper, zinc, as our minerals for various purposes, various enzymes. So 20 elements is what we need. There's some interesting, just really specific uses. Vanadium here.
They can't see your cursor on.
Can you see the cursor?
No. We can see it in the room. At home, they can't see it.
This doesn't seem to work. There it goes. Okay, vanadium right here.
I might add, could you make that
those
Can you
slides
see-
full screen because we're just seeing a little part of it.
Oh, full screen.
Yeah,
Full screen here.
yeah, that's gonna be a challenge. And I don't know how to do this.
Full screen up here.
No, they want to see that, right?
Yeah,
But they're seeing this.
I'm seeing this, okay.
And that is a presentation mode function that I never use. And I don't know how to, wait a minute, let's try
Can we
this.
minimize this? And
Well, what that's going to show us is your preview. Your slideshow. I just touched something. Wait. That did it.
That's better.
Okay, so now to advance, what do you do? I think you're gonna have,
Oh, I've got this.
okay, all right, you're good to go. All right,
Okay, so
a miracle occurred up here.
can you see that now on screen?
Yes,
Okay, so I guess what I was saying is that some of the elements are very specific. Vanadium is right here. There's a Amanita muscarium mushroom that grows in our woods around here. It concentrates vanadium for some reason, but it's required. So in general, 20 elements make up what we need for life. Yes, so here we are. The pictures doesn't inspire awe. I don't know what would. But that's us hanging in space from the moon, from the Apollo program. We're the only planet that we know that has oxygen in the atmosphere. We're unique in that respect, and that's both good and bad. We need oxygen to breathe, but oxygen is a very reactive element. It reacts with organic molecules. When an organism dies, it decomposes, it breaks down. Oxygen will break down organic molecules. We spend a lot of metabolic energy protecting ourselves from the ravages of oxygen. So both the good and the bad, but it's not conducive to generating new life forms. So currently that's not an option. So sort of two questions. How did the molecules necessary for the first organisms, where they come from? How did we get them? And could something that we ponder, I think, could life as we know it existed elsewhere in the universe? So let's just sort of think of this as a model to start with. So Brian has given us the Earth, the habitable world. We need to synthesize the basic molecules that life needs. They have to react into more complex molecules, polymers, DNA, proteins, etc. Somehow they have to get into something like a cell. They have to organize, and then a lot of question marks. They have to form life. Okay, so that very, very broadly speaking, something like this has to happen. So what molecules do we need? We form like the simplest cell, like a virus. We actually need really two basic things. We need proteins and we need molecules for either DNA or RNA. If we look at proteins, here's a generic protein. There are two carbon atoms. There's an amino acid, an amino group here, NH2, and there's an acid group here. So it's really an acidic basic end of the molecule, two molecules. So every amino acid has the two carbon atoms. It has a side chain here. And we draw it flat on a flat screen like this, but carbon is actually tetrahedral here. This carbon right here has 4 bonds attached to it, 4 atoms attached to it, and they're arranged in a tetrahedral fashion. It's three-dimensional. Bond angles of 109, if that's important to you. So that there's this tetrahedral carbon right here, but carbon likes to form 4 bonds. And Brian talked about last time some special unique properties of carbon. Carbon forms very strong carbon-carbon bonds to itself. It's the only element that really does that. So carbon can form long chains of molecules. And so it's the element that we know that does that. And so probably if there's life somewhere else, carbon-based too, because carbon's the one element that forms the complexity necessary for life. So we talk about tetrahedral carbon here. Okay, that hydrogen should be sort of sticking up, I guess. The lines mean bonds, and so that carbon is bonded to 4 different elements there. So amino acids can react to each other. So here's 2 amino acids. Here's one with an acid group here. Here's another amino acid with a base group here. A common reaction is that if you condense out water, hydrogen from here and OH from here, H2O, then this carbon can bond to this nitrogen and you sort of form this peptide bond right here. Okay, so that's old hat for amino acids. Amino acids do that all the time. But the interesting thing is now there's another amino acid over here, amino group over here that can bond to another acid and it can extend the chain this way. And there's an acid group over here, which can extend the chain this way. And so it can form polymers. Amino acids can form different polymers. They can grow in both directions. So proteins are long chains of the different amino acids. This R group right here, it means generic. Actually, how many amino acids do we need? We need 20 amino acids to form all life on Earth. We need 20 amino acids. And they differ. They differ by this group right here. So if this group is hydrogen, then we have the basic protein amino acid glycine. But we have 19 other different carbons types of groups here. And so it's the ordering of these that make the different proteins, and that's dictated by our DNA. One of the other unique properties, and you can have this for free. It's a tetrahedral carbon atom, right? But there's an interesting development when you have 4 different groups attached to it. You have a hydrogen and a nitrogen and this other carbon and some other group down here. There are 4 different things attached to carbon. And when that happens, if you would interchange 2 of these, if you would put the hydrogen here and put the amine group here, you get an identical carbon atom, you get an identical molecule, except it's backwards. It's a mirror image. You know, if you hold your left hand up to the mirror, what the mirror reflects is your right hand. It's a mirror image. It's a non-superimposable mirror image. You can't superimpose your right hand on the left hand. They're backwards, you know, they just don't work. Okay, so that's what's happening here. That's what it's trying to show here. This is a mirror image. If you reflect this molecule into mirror, you get this molecule back, and they're non-superimposable. Chemically, they're identical. If I made this in the laboratory, I would get a 50-50 mixture of both of them. But the intriguing thing is that nature has different ideas. Of the 20 amino acids throughout the entire world, they're all left-handed. For some reason, who knows why? Nature has decided that we should be left-handed. So anyway, 20 amino acids make up what we need for life. We need to make either DNA or RNA. The current thinking is that probably RNA was the first molecule. It's a more versatile molecule than DNA, but you need 4 bases: the adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine. You need a ribose. And last night I saw an error in the backward 5 there. That should be a 3. It should be a 2. It should be down. Anyway, ribose is a sugar. Ribose is a sugar. It's 5 carbon atom sugar. Deoxyribose is in DNA, and that means you've lost an oxygen atom. and you need phosphate. It's a mineral. So if you're going to make DNA or RNA, you need 6 molecules, the 4 bases, the ribose, and phosphate. So to make this most simplest molecule, most simplest cell, you need 26 molecules, 20 amino acids, 4, 5, 6 molecules here. How does that work? So here's the structure of the DNA. The base connects to the sugar connects to the polymer, and again, that can be the phosphatamine. And so again, this phosphate can react with the sugar, and so you can build polymers in this direction and then in this direction here. So you can form polymers of these. And again, it's the ordering of the bases that give rise to the properties of either DNA or RNA. So we need those 26 molecules. Really simple, right? So I said that we're the only planet that we know that has oxygen. Our atmosphere today is nitrogen, oxygen, about 1% argon, increasing amounts of carbon dioxide and water. It's called an oxidizing atmosphere. That means oxygen is there and will react with a lot of things. Organic molecules are specifically subject to a reaction with oxygen. Yeah, we're burning fossil fuels, and that's contributing to the rise in carbon dioxide. Iron under these atmospheres is called oxidizing iron, think rust. The ultimate fate of iron in our atmosphere today is rust. And rust is pretty much an unreactive, inert thing. That'll become important later. So today is an oxidizing atmosphere, not conducive to the formation of life. Charles Darwin, through his thoughts into the mix, in 1871, he was writing and said that the origin of life may have begun a warm little pond with all sorts of ammonia and phosphate salts, light, heat, electricity present, that a protein compound was chemically formed, ready to undergo still more complex changes. So short on details, but you know, it's kind of interesting starting point. The warm little pond, something we can envision, I guess. He went on to say, at the present time, such matter would be instantly devoured or absorbed, which would not be the case before living creatures were formed. So he understood the dangers of today, the problems of today. Not much happened until about 1938, and a Russian chemist, Alexander Oparin, wrote a book, The Origin of Life. And he brought up the fact that the oxygen today is a result of life on Earth. If there wouldn't be any oxygen, and our original atmosphere would be probably a reducing atmosphere similar to many other planets. It would contain hydrogen, carbon monoxide, methane, ammonia, water, hydrogen sulfide, and similar molecules like that. Under these conditions, iron would be in the reduced form, iron +2 for the chemists in the crowd. So he made this proposal. The original atmosphere was totally different than what we have today. It was a reducing atmosphere with total different types of molecules present. Not much was done with that. Well, to I guess summarize, you know, you need certain things to happen. You need organization of the molecules also. You don't need the 26, but you need them. I'll let the biologists talk about this model of the cell, but the point is that molecules are just not randomly in the cell. They're very highly organized to do what they have to do. So we have to have the 26 molecules. They have to be encased in a cell, and they have to be very highly ordered and oxidized and arranged. So in 1950, Stanley Miller, University of Chicago, was looking for a research project for his PhD. Worked for Harold Urey, who was a famous astrochemist, I guess you'd call him. He read Oparin's book, and he decided to put it to the test. And so he designed this equipment. It's laboratory glassware, but It's a model of the Earth. It's a simple laboratory model simulation of the Earth. You have a flask. You can heat it. You can have boiling water here, storing rod here. But tube goes up. Water boils, evaporates, goes up here into the atmosphere. This other flask, he has 2 electrodes here that you can create sparks, lightning in the real world. Okay. Water vapor comes down here. It condenses into rain, into mountain streams, rivers, and eventually back into the ocean. So we have this little circulating model of the Earth. Many years ago, I was asked to work with a high school student, and he was interested in this, and so he decided that he would learn to work with glass and make this apparatus. And so he pretty much depleted the department of glassware. But he did make it, but he started to run an experiment and he broke it. So that ended that experiment. But he did make it. It's maybe 2 or 3 feet tall. It's not a major thing, but Stanley Miller succeeded in making it, and so he charged it then with the molecules that Aparn said were probably here: methane, ammonia, hydrogen, water, etc. You can put them in right here. You can stopcock. You can put the molecules in right here. Turn the heat on to heat the water, and went home for the weekend. And so he came back the next Monday and looked at the thing, started analyzing it, and he found that actually it changed color, but there were amino acids in there. He synthesized half a dozen or so amino acids with that first experiment. He went on to modify the experiment and try different things. And under a variety of conditions, you can use electric spark lightning. You can use black light, like UV light from the sun. You can use a heat lamp. You can use sound. Almost any type of energy you input there, you can make amino acids. You just can't keep them from forming, it seems like. If you add hydrogen sulfide, then you get the amino acid cysteine, which is a sulfur-containing thing. If you add hydrogen cyanide, it's perfect. We don't like hydrogen cyanide today, but back then, no one around. It's a perfectly good molecule. You can make adenine and guanine, 2 of the bases for the DNA. You add formaldehyde and ammonia, you get the ribose sugar. And an anecdotal story that I heard, I'll give it to you secondhand. I was listening to a fellow give a talk one time, and he was saying, organic chemists like to figure out mechanisms for making molecules. And one particular question said that if he could have cyanocetylene, he could make the other 2 bases, cytosine and uracil. And he thought that that's a really weird molecule, but he apparently eventually talked to an astronomer and said, yeah, space is full of cyanocetylene. So varying the conditions and varying the mixtures, you can make essentially all of the molecules necessary for life under prebiotic conditions, the proposed prebiotic conditions. So that's kind of a fascinating thing. Did it really happen? Obviously something happened, right? But in 1969, this Murchison meteorite fell in Australia. It seemed to fall, and it was found. It exploded over the outback, and it was seen to fall, and people came out, and within a couple or 3 days, they collected several pounds of pieces of this Murchison meteorite. It's a carbon-based chondrite. But it's been extensively ionized or analyzed to see what its composition is. And interestingly enough, over 50 amino acids have been found in that meteorite. Interestingly enough, there's a slight excess of the left-handed molecules, okay? The fact that there are a lot of molecules that are not found on Earth, and the fact that number 3, that there's a ratio of hydrogen isotopes is different from on Earth, pretty much convinced people that this came from somewhere other than Earth. It's been dated to about 7 billion years. Earth formed about 4.5 billion years, so this predates Earth. So somewhere in space, molecules are being formed. There are a lot of other organic molecules present, but we're primarily just the amino acids here. So it's not a terrestrial organ. So there are amino acids all over the place in space, apparently. So in our proposed step here, okay, so we have our habitable world. We can make our simple molecules.
I'm just gonna try to put this up.
Okay. Okay, great. Okay, thanks. So we can make our amino acids. We can make our amino acids and our the simple molecules we need. We know that they do condense. We know that they do condense. They can condense into prebiotic polymeric type complexes. We need to get them into some kind of a cell. I don't know, and so from here on, it's a lot of hand waving, I think, but think of Darwin's warm little pond. It's sitting there, it's collecting molecules over the ages. Sun is beaming down. Maybe the pond is evaporating, concentrating the molecules. Maybe they absorb on surfaces of rocks and minerals, get together, or they can react. Somehow they get into some kind of a vesicle.
I have a question. Did Miller's experiment and it generated amino acids? Did it generate any oxygen?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
No, yeah, that's to come. Yeah, but good question. Yeah, so but molecules get together somehow, and then with a lot of hand waving, out come bacteria and all of the biological life forms that emerge after that. So the scenario becomes a little less certain at this point. How do you get? There are molecules that do form vesicles. Soap molecules are good at that. One of the cleansing properties of soap, it can form round spherical vesicles that carry dirt away. Dirt is nonpolar, water is polar. And so soap can do that, but there's no evidence that soap was around in prebiotic life. But there are molecules that can do that. So we'll question for further time, for later times. What's happening?
Oh,
What?
I think it shifted focus to the little window David dragged over.
Good to have technicians. Okay. But what we do know, we don't know how they did, but what we do know, we say that the Earth formed about 4.5 billion years ago. By about 3.8 billion years ago, single cell fossils start showing up in the fossil record. Nature hasn't wasted a whole lot of time in getting things together. So by 3.8 billion years ago, they had solved this problem. Have cells that are functioning. To expand this a little bit, here's a expanded volume. So at this point, there's still iron +2. It's a reducing atmosphere. But right around in this time, things start to change. We start transitioning to an oxygen atmosphere. And why do we do that? So the oldest rocks that we have are about 3.8 billion years. About 3.5 to 2.8 billion years, they had developed photosynthesis, ability to do photosynthesis. These guys are with us today. These are called stromatolites, and this is off the western coast of Australia, Shark Bay. I think we really ought to have a field trip to Western Australia. What happened out there? But they're sort of a composite material. They're a mixture of mostly limestone and a creature called cyanobacteria. It's the first photosynthesizing organism we have. The first one. It's mastered the conversion of sunlight energy from the sun into making organic molecules. And so there's layers. There's layers of calcium carbonate, the limestone, and then layers of bacteria that apparently accreted on there. And so they're very happily living today in shallow waters, still generating oxygen. Some other place in the world, but they're very extensive right here. They're in the fossil record. This is in Glacier National Park, high up in the Rocky Mountains. You can sort of see the layered structures here, all the layered structures here. So they're first creature to undergo photosynthesis. Some of the oldest living microfossils these days. They're still around synthesizing oxygen. Photosynthesis takes carbon dioxide and water and makes carbohydrates, sugar, starches, cellulose, and stuff like that. And if you balance the equation, there's more oxygen than you need. Oxygen is a byproduct. So these things generate oxygen. They discard the oxygen into the atmosphere. And so oxygen starts to build up and the world changes. The world changes dramatically because all of the life forms, we're used to getting reduced iron. Reduced iron is very available to living things. It's very soluble. It's in the water. It's just there for the taking. But if you oxidize iron, have an oxidizing atmosphere, it forms rust. And rust is pretty much inert. If life is going to survive and keep going, they need to solve the problem how to get iron out of the rust. And plants have done that. Plants are very good today at extracting iron from insoluble rust. These guys learned in very short order. So here, in the fossil record, about the same time that these cyanobacteria form, are these banded iron formations. There are alternate layers of reduced iron and oxidized iron and reduced iron and oxidized iron. Apparently there's a lot of transition fluctuation here. Start out with reduced iron, oxygen grew, iron got oxidized, reduced the oxygen, so then iron 2 played out and so forth. So you went through a period of transition at which these banded iron formations, alternating reduced iron, reduced iron, oxidizing iron stuff, apparently formed. But then after we got through that, here, we start seeing oxidized iron, and then evolution continues, and so we see the oldest animal fossils here. So this period of transition here is really a fascinating type of thing to really think about. So by this time, then the stage is set. We have an atmosphere that has oxygen. We have all the basic materials necessary for the first cells. Somehow, in Darwin's warm little pond, they organize themselves. They don't have to do it right away. They have a few million years to figure this out, how to organize to get to the place where they can reproduce and generate more cells. But we know they did. We don't know how they did, but we know they did. Yeah. So where is everybody? Enrico Fermi was a physicist in the Manhattan Project, and apparently famous quote attributed to him that they were talking around one day, and he was talking about these kind of issues, and he just sort of blurted out, where is everybody? Brian has shown us a universe that has 1 trillion or so galaxies. Each galaxy has sort of a billion or so stars. We're finding that stars have planets we've discovered something like 5,000 planets around different stars now. We know that molecules necessary for life are very easily formed, given anything like, primitive Earth conditions. Where is everybody? Are we the only ones? The kind of questions that sort of keep you up at night, I guess. I missed a slide. Somewhere I missed a slide. Where'd he go? Yeah, okay, Jeremy. Jeremy England is actually he's at Virginia, Texas, Georgia Institute of Technology now. He's one of the up and rising physicists, and he's got this theory that he calls dissipation-driven adaptation. And he's come up with the idea that random groups of molecules can organize themselves to more efficiently absorb and dissipate energy from the environment. That's what he was talking about, the second law of thermodynamics. And he believes that self-organizing systems are an inherent part of the physical world. In other words, he believes that if you have Darwin's warm little pond there with a bunch of collection of random molecules in close proximity, and you have the sun beaming down on them, that those molecules will organize in order to more efficiently process energy. He thinks this is an inherent part of nature. This is being debated now. He's pretty much to computer simulations, but if that's true, then once molecules get into a cell, they've got a few million years to organize and to put themselves in a way that most efficiently processes energy. Now, is that true? Maybe that's something to be thought about, I guess. In MIT language, he says when a group of atoms is driven by an external source of energy, sun, for instance, surrounded by a heat bath, ocean, it will often gradually restructure itself in order to more efficiently process energy. So maybe that's right. Well, that's something that's being debated at the moment. That's sort of the black energy of this topic, I guess. So so we know that cells organize themselves. They learn to incorporate the energy of the sun, photosynthesis, and so we now have oxygen in the atmosphere, and so now the stage is set for biological evolution to occur. A lot of questions, but where is everybody? Why haven't we seen legitimate? There are a lot of people looking for UFOs and that sort of stuff, but we keep looking for evidences of life on other planets, but so far, no evidence for actual life on other planets. So let's stop there and see if there are any questions.
I was just thinking, where you have the chart there where oxygen starts getting into the atmosphere. But prior to that, oxygen was needed for water. So water came first. And how did
Water came first.
Pardon?
There's always been oxygen in the rocks and minerals and water and stuff, but actually in the atmospheric oxygen molecules, O2, is what we need to breathe.
Right.
Yeah.
No, what I'm saying is water is needed.
Right.
So that had to come first before the oxygen in the atmosphere.
Right. Yeah.
I guess I just time,
Yeah, apparently the oceans formed pretty early in the scheme of things before a lot of this other stuff happened. So the ocean's been around a long time. So yeah. That's the difference between us and our moon. So there's no evidence of water on the moon. But it's kind of interesting.
So did that oxygen come from your galaxies?
Yeah, the Earth began with it and it was locked up in water. And it took energy to break the water apart. So it wasn't going to emerge as O2 unless there was a process like photosynthesis that could break up the water. Otherwise, you just have an ocean that would sit there.
And would lightning do that too?
Probably on a small scale, but not enough
No.
to make a difference. I mean, even now, photosynthesis is replacing our oxygen.
Right, yeah.
And without plants, we wouldn't have oxygen to breathe.
Right. That's the sad thing about destroying the rainforest. Because not only are we polluting the atmosphere, but we're cutting down trees that are giving us oxygen.
And putting their carbon back in the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Right.
As CO2. That really ties up oxygen, because as Jeff will tell you, those bonds are really strong.
Yeah, I think it brings up kind of another interesting question too. When does a collection of molecules become a living thing? That's where we need theologians, I think. I don't have the answer to that one. I think the other thing that it shows, we like to classify ourselves as physicists or chemists or biologists or whatever, but every discipline's had something to contribute to this story. It's science. It's not all chemistry or all physics or all biology. Yeah, we need to talk to each other, I guess. Solve some of these problems we have and issues we have, questions we have.
Question for Brian. They just discovered 4 huge, massive galaxies virtually the day after the Big Bang. A couple 100 million years, 400 million years, whatever. How does that change things, if anything?
I think it means that the ideas about how the first galaxies formed, which were pretty much developed without much data, need to be rethought carefully about how it was that galaxies assembled and stars formed and galaxies assembled so quickly. So, I mean, we've had very little observation pertaining to galaxy formation. So to me, it's no surprise that the rudimentary theories that have been developed aren't correct.
So the next series of dissertations will be about this.
Probably. And hours and hours of CPU time on supercomputer.
Did you see the interview of Neil deGrasse Tyson this last week?
No.
They were asking him about these new galaxies that we're discovering. And he said, oh, good, a problem.
Yeah, that's what makes it interesting.
Yeah, that's exactly what he said.
Every time you find out something, there's a lot of stuff that you don't know the answer to, so you've got something to work on.
I think there'll be a lot of dissertations written about how molecules get together and organize themselves into cells too.
There's a follow-up experiment that for the Urey Miller experiment. Now I would add that Miller was 21 years old when he did that experiment, and he got it published in Science magazine, which is the top of the science heap, when he was 21 years old, and that's kind of like a career maker. You're guaranteed tenure somewhere. But so you can take collections of amino acids, right? And they sell this in kits, and we used to do it in the lab, but it's a collection of amino acids, and you put it together in an acidic environment and boil it. And what happens is that it will form spheres, right? The amino acids will get together and they'll form these peptide bonds that you were talking about. They'll make polymers, and the polymers will have chemical properties so that they have a water loving surface on one side and a water hating surface on the inside. And so they'll form these spheres, and they will accumulate certain types of molecules, or collect them and exclude other molecules. And this just happens, if I could use the word spontaneously. It seems like a
Self-organizing.
but this is evidence of self-organization. And I strongly agree. I think there's plenty of evidence for all these self-organizing principles that manifest themselves throughout the universe and in our world in a whole bunch of different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm leapfrogging ahead, but what's the alternative explanation that this didn't happen spontaneously? Right, that, there was Big Bang and it flung all this matter out into the universe and it collected in galaxies, which are birth chambers of stars, which then have as part of their lifestyle of nuclear reactions, and they collapse and blow up and they fling all these complex molecules out into the universe, and then it collects in certain little places. And those molecules then interact with one another and eventually form us. And here we are, it's this collection of stardust sitting around this room thinking about that. And my response to it is, damn.
Just don't forget the role of natural selection here.
Absolutely.
In terms of choosing which of those molecules was able to reproduce and carry on a particular genetic line.
Yeah. And that process goes all the way back to the very origin of even proto-life, right? Why did those things persist? Because they persist. Right? Why was this successful? Because it was successful. Right? And that's what natural selection says, is that things that work are going to hang around. Right? And things that don't work kind of disappear.
Cyanobacteria. Brian Swim says that this is the result of leaving hydrogen alone for 13 billion years.
Yeah.
I'd like to go back to the meteorite. That's really fascinating. That now I don't know if everybody caught that about the left-handed molecules are the only ones that can form life. LeVo, is that what you say? LeVo, I've forgotten that from chemistry. But to find that in a meteorite is showing that process is going on somewhere else in the
somewhere else, yes. Yeah, there are several processes that that could possibly cause that, but which one works or why they happen, that's speculation. Yeah. There are some minerals like clay. The way you separate left and right-handed molecules is you react them with another molecule that's left-handed, and there are some clays that form in the earth that are left-handed. So maybe left and right-handed molecules absorbed on the clay, and the left hand stuck and the right hand didn't, or something like. I mean, that's the type of scenarios that come up. Yeah. But what happens in outer space where the Murchison meteorite came from? It's an interesting question. That answer your question? Yeah.
Sure.
I have a question to Fermi there. Where is everybody? I can ask Brian, didn't Einstein include the concept of time in this? And so if that's involved.
Time is a big issue because you look at our galaxy, you have 100 billion, several hundred billion stars, each with multiple planets. So in a way, it seems compelling that life may have formed on many of these planets. But when in the 10 or 12 billion history of the galaxy did that happen?
Right.
And if it evolved into intelligent life, when and how long did that life form last? Right. And if they're not active when we are, we may never know about them. So
right. So our nanosecond may not match to their nanosecond 14 billion years ago.
That's right. That's right. And if we don't find anybody eventually, we might conclude that, well, intelligent species go extinct pretty quickly, maybe. And
because it's too energy consumptive, maybe, or
I don't know.
Yeah.
They discover what they can do with uranium. Or where they can put carbon dioxide into their atmospheres. I don't know.
yeah. So that nanosecond and every other universe is nanosecond of humanity or life. Does it last long?
Yeah,
And then we're back to this.
if they don't line up with us,
We'll never see them, and they'll never see us.
That's right. And that could be the big problem in the whole thing.
That makes sense to me. So the time piece, it makes sense why we don't see anybody.
There is evidence of water on other
Is it?
But there was water on Earth 4 billion years ago. So that doesn't mean there was life.
There's water in comets, there's water in interstellar space, there's lots and lots of, a lot of molecules that you can detect directly
Right.
in interstellar space. So there's no
To
shortage.
self-organize like something like us would be unique in time, not only to us, but to every other self-organizing body that looks like us or could be us.
Probably. Mhm.
Star Trek episode.
Yeah, that's really unique because all the nanoseconds of humanity is, or quasi-humanity is lined up and they see each other at the same time.
Yeah. I think to some extent, the Fermi paradox maybe reflects how little we know about this.
What is the Fermi paradox?
Where is everybody?
Where if there's so many abodes for life in the galaxy. And if they can, I mean, we've only been capable for a short period of time. And if you project ahead a couple of millennia, who knows what we'll be capable of. And will we build machines that will colonize the galaxy? Well, has somebody else done that? And if they have, why aren't they here?
Maybe we
Well, I'm
are.
hearing them. Huh?
Maybe we are.
So, but it,
Discovery Channel. You watch that, huh?
I think we know so little about it that I think in a way that seeming paradox occurs because we start with an idea and follow it to its most extreme conclusion. That we don't know if all the pieces are in place that we get to the point where there are intelligent civilizations that survive for thousands of millennia or longer, millions or even a
Yeah.
billion years.
At exactly the same time as us,
Yeah.
which is at what mathematical probability would that take?
Well, if they could, yeah, it'd be very small, but if they could live for a long time, you solve that problem. But
Right.
that's an if. There's a whole chain of ifs. that
There's
makes-
some evidence that we're not going to pull that off.
The jury's out.
And that's a depressing thing.
It really is.
That's what we should really be thinking about.
All right, well, that's enough of a crack in the discussion for me to get into. All right, so considering the scope, right, of Big Bang, matter scattered, galaxy, blah, 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 us, right? And then where the progression seems to be to values. Right, and I know that's a leap. I just made a big leap, but if we are spontaneously, inevitably formed entities, right? And I don't think that there's anything special. I think that life occurred inevitably. It was going to happen, right? And here it is, right? Just following natural laws the entire way. And the next step of where does stuff go seems to me to be within the dimension of what it is that we value. Right. And that makes so much sense to me. I'm just afraid it doesn't make any sense to anybody else.
But in a sense, then what is evolutionarily significant in the preservation of the species? What values will help the species endure? And so to use value language, you would have to develop as a species some reasonable understanding to not kill yourself.
Right.
No trouble.
Yeah.
So even within the context of natural selection, right, that, things that are selected that persist, right? Those, what persists, the things that will persist given the conditions. And it seems that we're right. I see us at this point, right, that where evolution has gone, from just enough hydrogen atoms left alone to us having presence and consciousness in this room. And so that it's moving towards the pinnacle, and there's a bottleneck of, are we going to survive? Right? Are we as a species going to survive? Is this thing that we possess called consciousness and sentience, is it going to survive? And I think that depends on what values we adopt, which introduces free will into the equation, because we can make choices, or seemingly can make choices.
We cut down the rainforest.
Yeah. Or do we exercise self-care as a society? Actually adopt some of these Jesus-y principles. I feel like Sarah Silverman, you're not going to like this. I'm going to say Jesus. that about self-care and care towards one another, is that truly a value that guides our behavior? Because it's evident that the behavior of the species can influence the survival of the species.
Correct.
I thought a good term for that, are we capable of developing the collective higher level of consciousness it takes to survive as a species, not just individuals?
Yeah.
But there's a piece of optimism that if we don't make it in an infinite universe, some other self-organized quasi-human thing that looks like us may.
Yeah.
So in terms of the success of something like that, the probability rises that it will over time.
Or if we don't make it, some other species on our own planet.
Yeah.
Right.
Think of us as like the dinosaurs.
There may,
Paved the way, right?
there may be something else after us.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anyone's heard of the noosphere. And
What is that?
that is,
Same root as noeticism, David.
I think Brian Swim has talked about that, and others. It's human consciousness sort of that's uniting to save the planet, in a sense. That it's a part of our evolution. That this is happening where people of and our species is trying to save our species are sort of uniting consciously and working towards saving our species.
Greta Thunberg.
I think Brian Swim is part of that, actually, I believe, but others too, but I've been, we've been watching YouTube things on it.
Then there's also that question to me of what role does technology play in that? Is consciousness or, our human experience and knowledge, is we're collecting that and passing that on to future generations more and more. That's taking place in something in an inorganic form. But the lines between life and that kind of inorganic ability to transmit information and consciousness to future generations becomes blurrier and blurrier.
Does consciousness necessarily have to be organic? Can it be
Right, I think that's
inorganic?
part of the question.
And
Yeah.
that would have a better chance of survival, wouldn't it?
It would.
Well, if you had like a hive mind, wouldn't you be more interested in surviving then?
The board.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
But I mean, I don't know, it's fascinating to me to think about, because already we're, we tend to see a distinction between, I think, like, computers and humanity that is less and less bifurcated than I think we want to think of it being. I mean, think of all of the technology that becomes a part of our bodies if you've had a hip replacement or, a knee replacement or contact lenses or all these things that begin to, there are parts of our body that help us function better that were not there when we were born. And most of us now, carry around a computer that's more and more a part of us, but technology has evolved to offer things like a computer that is a part of, say, eyeglasses that you wear. I think those lines are gonna continue to get fuzzier and fuzzier and.
And maybe Jeff and his crew can come up with something that would help us be less dependent on oxygen. Just right.
So we can continue to destroy.
So we can continue to destroy the oxygen.
Yeah.
I suppose you can carry a little water generator around nuclear power that breaks down water into hydrogen and oxygen.
There you go.
I don't know, I mean, I think part of the theological question there is, we have often, in Christianity for sure, have often thought of ourselves as kind of the pinnacle of evolution, like, everything that happened, however you want to, if that happened in 6,000 years or, 4 billion years, all happened to be able to get us to where we are because that's the perfection. But no, I don't think it is either, Larry, but would you disagree that that's kind of been a part of
It's how we think
the
of
way we have thought?
we're the top of the line. Yeah.
Well, and religion has had a big
A step along,
part in that.
I think we are in an evolution toward whatever's coming later continues to come.
We are a pinnacle if we have the power of self-determination.
That's when you need Gary. Are we a pinnacle species or whatever it's called? Gary Barrier.
Gary's on there, he was on the.
Oh, yeah, I'm listening, yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure we are.
Still out.
I just real quick want to give the definition of the noosphere because I find it very interesting. The noosphere is a term used to describe how human consciousness and mental activity has influence on the biosphere, including its relationship to planetary evolution. That's a big statement. First, actually, is referenced by the writings of Teilhard de Chardin. And Brian Swim, I think, is part of that now. Was.
All
My
right.
mind's blown. Are we?
Yeah, we're done. Yeah. Mine is too. It's like. Yeah, that's happened. Yeah, we're out of time. Wow, where'd that go?
David, can I just say thank you to Brian and to Jeff for some
Yes.
wonderful programs. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, and just Julie, just to draw you out a little bit, you're not going to be able to do this next week, is that correct?
That is correct. I'm sorry. Maybe next year.
Okay, all right. Well, thanks for you, kind of the motive force behind us doing this all together. So thank you for that. And next week we'll do something. I don't know, probably, it's always interesting.
Delve into this higher consciousness.
Yeah.
Yeah, to be continued.
All right. Well, blessings all. Thank you all.
And be you. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. I think we're slowly evolving.